Every fantasy world has a hierarchy of power. Knights at the top, mages close behind, and somewhere near the bottom, forgotten by everyone, sits the kitchen staff. Nobody ever expected the lowest ranked person on that list to become the reason the Demon Lord's entire army collapsed in a single week. His name was Ren, 23 years old, with messy jet black hair that refused to sit flat and sharp brown eyes that missed nothing. He wore a white chef's apron over a dark gray, long-sleeve shirt, black fingerless gloves on his hands, and a rolled leather knife case strapped against his thigh. Right now, he was standing inside the army's small supply tent, sorting crates of vegetables that had arrived that same afternoon by wagon. He picked up one heavy crate, tucked it against his hip, and stepped out through the tent flap, heading toward the cooking station across the camp. He walked slowly between the rows of resting soldiers, past knights sharpening their swords and mages quietly reading from old spell books by firelight. Nobody bothered learning his name. Nobody thought a man who spent his mornings dicing onions would ever matter once real fighting started. He reached the edge of camp near the tree line, set the crate down by his cooking station, and began unpacking vegetables onto a wooden board. That tree line was closer to danger than anyone in the camp realized, and within the hour, the shadows hiding inside it would start to move. Stick with this one, because a level 1 kitchen hand-chopping vegetables by firelight is about to make the kingdom's finest fighters look like amateurs. The attack came without warning, the way it always does in these stories, shadows peeling off the tree line like living smoke. They twisted into snarling, wolf-shaped horrors with glowing violet eyes, and within seconds, they were sprinting straight across the open field toward the camp. An alarm horn sounded from the watchtower, and the camp's elite guard came pouring out of their tents, blades drawn, shields locking into formation. These shadow wolves moved wrong, though, flickering between positions like they were skipping frames no human eye could properly follow. 3 veteran knights went down in the first 10 seconds near the front line, their blades slicing empty air a half-second too late every time. Back at his cooking station, Ren heard the horn and the screaming, dropped the vegetable in his hand, and turned just as one wolf broke away from the main pack. It came sprinting straight down the row of tents toward him, faster than anything he had ever seen, and lunged straight at his throat. Pure instinct took over, the same instinct that had saved his fingers from a wild kitchen knife 1,000 mornings before this one. His hand snapped up in a simple downward diagonal chop, the exact motion used to split a carrot cleanly without ever rocking the blade. His bare hand caught the wolf's claw mid-strike and redirected the force completely off its path, sending the creature crashing hard into the dirt beside his cooking table. Before it could recover, Ren's kitchen knife, still resting on the cutting board a step away, was already in his moving hand. He didn't swing wildly like the knights further down the line. He struck exactly the way he broke down a chicken every single shift at work. The creature came apart cleanly along the joints and dissolved into drifting black smoke, and Ren just stood there, staring at his own hands. That was when a small orange light flickered to life beside his head, shaped like a tiny floating pinch of glowing spice. "Well," it said cheerfully, "that was clean work. I've been waiting a long time for a chef this good to finally show up." Down the row, the fighting had stopped, and several knights who had just finished off the last of the wolves turned and noticed the smoke fading near Ren's station. They walked over slowly, weapons still drawn, and found the kitchen hand standing calmly with a single knife, while 3 of their own bled on the ground nearby. "My name is Saffron," the little spirit continued. "I am your ultimate kitchen system, and I've just confirmed something these warriors never figured out. Your stats aren't weak, chef," Saffron said. "They're just being read wrong by a world that never learned to look at a cook properly." Ren wiped his blade clean on his apron out of habit, staring at the golden interface panel now blinking fully into existence in front of his eyes. "Explain that to me slowly," he said, "because I have a feeling my night just got a lot more complicated than dinner service." The wounded were carried off to the medical tent. The last of the smoke cleared from the field, and slowly, the camp settled back into an uneasy quiet. Ren sat back down at his overturned cooking station, righting his crate of vegetables, while Saffron explained everything that had just happened to him. "Warriors train their bodies to overpower resistance," Saffron explained, floating lazy circles around his shoulder as the camp settled from the chaos. "You trained your body to work with resistance instead, and that difference is exactly why those wolves never managed to touch you." From across the camp, a broad-shouldered figure noticed the commotion had settled around the kitchen station and started walking over to investigate for himself. His name was Commander Drawl, a veteran with a jagged scar across his jaw and gray-streaked hair tied in a top knot, and he did not trust miracles. "You're telling me our best knights got outclassed by a cook?" Drawl said flatly, stopping in front of the station with his arms crossed tightly. Ren just shrugged, sheathing his knife calmly back into its holster. Technically, I outclassed the wolf. The knights just got unlucky with their timing. Drawl stared at him a long moment, said nothing else, and walked back toward the command tent, clearly unconvinced but unwilling to argue further that night. 3 nights later, a scout came sprinting out of the darkness and into the camp, breathless, pointing back toward the tree line he had just fled from. He burst straight into the command tent where Drawl was reviewing maps, gasping out that something far larger than the wolves was moving through the forest. Drawl grabbed his sword off the table and stormed out of the tent, shouting orders, and the entire camp scrambled awake and armed itself within minutes. Ren, hearing the commotion from his station, grabbed his knife case and cast iron pan and jogged toward the front line where the knights were forming ranks. Out past the tree line, a massive silhouette finally broke into view, stomping steadily toward the camp, with the ground itself seeming to shake beneath its weight. His name was Korgath the Ironclad, a hulking demon commander nearly 9 feet tall, encased in blackened obsidian plate armor fused into his skin. The knights formed ranks immediately at the front line, but Ren pushed forward through them and stopped, raising his hand to halt any charge. He studied Korgath the way he studied a difficult cut of meat and said quietly, "That armor's fused to his muscle tissue. You can't cut through it." Saffron chimed in excitedly. "Tenderizing strikes, chef. Repeated blunt impact along the muscle fibers weakens the bond between flesh and armor." Ren stepped out several paces ahead of the knights, alone in the open field now, and pulled his heavy cast iron pan free instead of drawing a blade. When Korgath swung his first axe in a bone-crushing overhead arc, Ren didn't dodge. He blocked and absorbed the impact directly through his stance. He redirected the shockwave straight back through the pan, striking Korgath's forearm 3 times in rapid, rhythmic succession. At the exact same point, the obsidian plating along Korgath's forearm cracked audibly, and Ren immediately pulled a leather flask from his belt and splashed it across the damaged section. The acid, prepared from wild dungeon fruit earlier that day, ate through the weakened plating in seconds, exposing raw, demonic flesh underneath for the first time. Korgath roared in genuine pain and stumbled backward, and Ren closed the gap instantly, finishing the fight in 4 clean strikes along the exposed seams. Korgath collapsed into drifting black ash right there in the open field, dissolving into glowing embers of raw ingredient in front of the entire stunned camp. The knights lowered their weapons and slowly walked forward to gather around Ren, who was already crouched down, collecting the glowing embers into a satchel. That night, Ren carried the harvested meat back to his cooking station, seared it over the fire, and took his first bite in front of the watching soldiers. His skin actually hardened slightly across his forearms as he chewed, a faint obsidian sheen crossing his skin while the system flashed a buff notification above him. Drop part 2 in comments or telling us which dish you'd want Ren to invent next, and hit subscribe to see where this power system goes.